Chronolife, a new realm. The latest continent has just been unveiled. Upon entering this alternate world, you're promised an encounter with 100 million fellow players, forming bonds with amazing allies, and tackling dungeons and epic bosses together. Or so the game's creators boasted. Asterisk system notification, a new character has been generated. Greetings, King Gok player, asterisk after the system's welcome, the main character paused for a moment, gazing into the horizon. The new continent's landscapes were undeniably stunning. Yet, something felt off. Why is this place deserted? Where are those 100 million players they hyped up? And what's this in his hand? A shovel? Confused about the developer's intentions for this tool, King Jess thrust the shovel into the soil. Instantly, the ground beneath him shimmered with a vivid blue glow. Out of nowhere, a massive chunk of earth shot upward. The spectacle left the guy frozen in awe. The block crashed down beside his feet with a thud, and Gok, still reeling, stared at it in bewilderment. Asterisk what in the world is this? Did I log into the wrong game? Asterisk he wondered, unsure what to make of this bizarre lump of dirt. Hesitantly, he tapped the block with his shovel. A small burst followed, and the dirt vanished before Gok's eyes, reappearing in his inventory. It seemed the makers of Chronolife had borrowed mechanics straight from humanity's most iconic game. Curious if the trick worked elsewhere, Jess dashed to a nearby tree. When he struck the trunk with his shovel, a piece snapped off and landed in his inventory. Right then, the system pinged him, a new crafting item was unlocked. A pop-up window prompted him to craft a chair from a single wood piece. But could it be that simple? A chair with one click? After a brief pause, Jess confirmed the action. Before his eyes, a wooden chair began to take shape. Soon, the chair was complete, and the wood piece vanished from his inventory. Lounging in his new chair, Jess chuckled, noting how odd this mechanic was. But his amusement faded quickly as he realized he was utterly alone. Where was he, really? Is this even Chronolife? Wasn't this supposed to be an RPG with monster battles and leveling up? Asterisk system notification, crafting skill level upgraded. New crafting options unlocked for King Gok player, asterisk slumping in his chair, Jess opened the crafting menu in frustration. A few more items had appeared in his crafting list, suggesting the game had some progression after all. Now he could craft a wooden club, a sword, or even a blasted siege catapult. Seriously? And that wasn't all. Among the items, Jess spotted something he wanted to try first. After chopping more trees and gathering materials, he selected the right blueprint and started placing blocks as the game directed. When he finished, he sighed in relief. His house was complete. Surprisingly, the gameplay wasn't as monotonous as he'd feared. Sure, his new home's interior was lackluster, but it was his first attempt. Pleased with his work, King Jess lay on the bed he'd just crafted. This world wasn't half bad, and the beds were pretty comfy, way cozier than King Jasoka's real-life home. That's no surprise, considering he lives in a cramped South Korean apartment. Asterisk miracles favor the persistent. Your hard work will always pay off. Outdo your past self, asterisk these motivational mantras kept Jess grinding daily, but they'd turned his life into a dull slog. Today, though, diving into Chronolife, the weight of his routine melted away. Holding the shovel, Jess pondered the possibilities in this world. A 100-meter mansion. A 2-story villa with a garden. He could build anything and live as he pleased. That's when it hit him, this world was truly magnificent. His reverie was shattered by a guttural roar from beyond the door. Whipping around, he saw a menacing lion bear, danger level A, looming in the doorway. It was his first encounter with a monster like this. As he debated his next move, the beast bellowed and lunged. By sheer luck, Jisoka dodged, narrowly escaping its claws. But his beloved bed wasn't so fortunate, it was shredded to bits. He wasn't about to let this brute get away with that. "You're done for," Jess snarled, brandishing his shovel at the foe. This lion bear would pay dearly for wrecking his property, with its life. Or rather, Jisoka's life. Kids, don't mess with wild beasts in your house, or you'll end up launched into orbit like this guy who thought smacking a bear with a shovel was a plan. Wisely, Jess stepped back, landing a swift kick to the beast's leg. After losing a few experience points, he respawned safely. That's when it sank in, he was hopelessly weak. Scanning his surroundings, he searched for his home. To his horror, only rubble remained of his cozy cottage. His bed and chair had perished heroically in the lopsided fight. Clutching the remnants of his chair, Jess collapsed to his knees, tears streaming as he wailed that just killing him would have been kinder. Why did that damn bear have to demolish the house he'd slaved over? Knowing the beast would return, Jess vowed revenge, though he wasn't sure how. Hours later, the lion bear prowled its territory and spotted a new cottage in the field. With a triumphant roar, it smashed through the wall. But inside, it froze in despair. "Welcome to the party, pal," Gok hissed, aiming his siege machine's barrels at the intruder. He pulled the lever, and dozens of spears punctured the beast's hide. It wasn't enough to kill it, though. Pinned like a dartboard, the lion bear charged. Luckily, Gok had prepared for this, having built a catapult. This bear was tenacious, but it couldn't withstand the next hit. A projectile rocketed into its face, shattering its teeth. As predicted, the beast didn't survive the collision with the massive boulder. Approaching the lifeless body with his shovel, Jess tapped it to ensure it wouldn't rise. A blue glow flared, and his rewards appeared: 1 meat chunk, 2 lion bear pelts, and 5 bones. Plus, the crafting menu unlocked a brutal helmet and lion bear armor. Now well equipped, Jess decided to hunt. Unbeknownst to him, he'd soon become the hunted. As he closed the crafting menu, a shadow loomed. Turning, he faced a horde of colossal creatures. Their encounter ended swiftly. By his 12th death, then his 49th, the monsters kept torching his house and sending him flying. On his 118th demise, doubt crept in. Why were these creatures so intent on killing him, and destroying his cabins? Rebuilding from scratch each time was maddening. It felt like they were deliberately trying to break him. If that was their game, they'd failed. They thought they could drive Gok out. No chance. They'd only fueled his rage, and he wasn't going anywhere. By the 1000th rebirth, the monsters, expecting to raise another flimsy hut, found a fortress of epic scale. The towering structure bristled with cannons on every side. At its peak, King Jess sat on a throne, his face grim. Declaring they couldn't win, he demanded they bring their leader. A piercing howl rang out as a flying beast dove, jaws agape to swallow him. Abruptly, a laser beam tore through it, shredding the creature. The shot warned the others, act now or be picked off. But why were they frozen? Scared, are you? Jess taunted with a smug grin. His bold words spurred the monster army into action. They charged, only to be mowed down by the fortress's guns. A few broke through the barrage, slamming into the walls. Their efforts only amused Jisoka, who'd let them get close to incinerate them with flamethrowers. The battlefield became an inferno. The surviving monsters, seeing their doom, tried to flee. Their boss, Gran Turris, danger-level goat, didn't tolerate deserters. He crushed any who turned tail. Facing Jess again, Gran Turris was confident Gok stood no chance, no matter how grand his fortress. The boss unleashed a fiery blast. As the flames faded, Jess emerged unscathed. Gran Turris had boasted that no structure could withstand his breath, but he'd never faced anything like Jess's creation. Next to it, the boss was a mere lizard. The result was inevitable. Gran Turris was obliterated by a single strike from the fortress's colossal fist. Rumble, rumble, it's coming. What started as a Minecraft-like game had morphed into a mecha showdown. Exiting his giant mech, Jess approached the fallen boss with his shovel. His inventory filled with loot, 10 Gran Turris hides, an eye, 2 fangs, a heart, 6 blood drops, and miscellaneous junk. The real prize was the Yahtzee Zack title, cementing his legend in this world. With Gran Turris dead, King Jess became the new ruler of Chronolife's realm. No creature would dare challenge him now. But this wasn't the end. Jasoka now held dominion, free to shape this world as he wished. This was just the start of his reign. In the territory once governed by a fallen overlord of another realm, the 7 Legion commanders received a system notification: Lord Gran Turris had perished. Commander Doro first planned to dispatch a reconnaissance unit to confirm the report, but he soon reconsidered. The system is infallible, so the creatures needed to gear up for conflict. As they readied to call forth their entire reserves, a deep rumble echoed. Those heavy steps were unmistakable. Lord Gran Turris had returned to his stronghold, astonishing his followers. Bowing before their lord, Doro, the Legion leader, announced they were about to deploy their fighters for vengeance. "So, you're all assembled here," a strange voice emerged from Gran Turris's mouth. Raising their eyes, the commanders noticed their lord appeared oddly different. "You're the ones who've been slaughtering and tormenting me endlessly. Everything I've created, everything I've built, you destroyed it all," the figure with a shovel said in a chilling tone, unveiling the eye socket of a machine that trained dozens of laser cannons on the group. Jess declared that each of them merited the same doom. Ignoring their protests, he icily commanded them to be silent and face their fate. A fiery blast, mimicking Gran Turris's breath, scorched the former lord's domain in an instant. The ground soon cooled, and a hush fell over the scene. Back on solid ground, King Jess started extracting precious minerals. "By the way, meet the 7th Legion's commander of the Gran Turris army. Loyal to Doro, this creature is now the protagonist's companion." Asking if his boss was weary, Doro offered assistance. Jess replied he could manage alone, noting that Doro was once much larger. How had he survived? The Beastman explained he could regenerate from even a fragment of himself, though it left him smaller and frilier. When Jess remarked that finishing him off would be easy, Doro pleaded tearfully for mercy. As he stacked mineral blocks beneath him, Jess decided to question the Legion general. Why were these creatures so intent on killing him? Doro apologized profusely, revealing that the Creator had once appeared to them, delivering a divine command to eliminate King Jess before vanishing. Stunned by the tale, Jess asked why the Creator would target an ordinary player. Can a bee in its hive comprehend the beekeeper's intentions? Doro murmured arrogantly, only to fall silent when Jess pointed out he was too bold for someone so easily crushed. Regardless, Doro admitted he knew no way to confront the Creator or uncover the true motive. Curiously, the beast had a question of his own. "What are you even doing?" Doro asked. With a laugh, King Jess explained he wanted to achieve something grand, so he chose to construct a tower. Pointing skyward, He said he'd always dreamed of visiting that place at least once. His aim? Reach the moon. It sounded thrilling, and who knows what's up there? Doro scoffed, calling it absurd. The moon's orbit, the tower's weight, surviving in space's vacuum, too many obstacles made it impossible. But Jess countered that his friend was thinking too narrowly. He'd go because the moon existed. It was about romance. Besides, it's just a game, so his tower plan would somehow succeed. Dumbfounded by the flawed logic and shaky reasoning, Doro realized this guy was utterly foolish. They were doomed. Yet, with no alternative, the beast resolved to feign loyalty to this fool, biding his time to strike. A full day passed. King Jess and his new ally kept building the tower. Doro hauled mineral blocks to the top, while Jess positioned them precisely. They occasionally paused to sketch plans for the tower's stability. Days went by, and once, Doro was nearly snatched by a massive bird soaring past. Oh, and they slept atop the tower, guarded by the late Grand Tourist Golem. These two remind me of my early Minecraft days, though I never reached Earth's exosphere. The air grew chilly up there, so they crafted warm clothing. Despite the hardships, their relentless work forged a strong bond between them. Their efforts didn't escape the Creator's notice. Building a tower to the moon seemed ludicrous to him, yet intriguing. Not wanting to discourage such a devoted player, he decided Jess would find a special event awaiting him on the moon. Soon, King Jess and Doro, now suited in space gear, stepped onto the lunar surface. One small step for a man, one giant leap for the Minecraft community, Jess mused, never imagining he'd feel such awe. Doro, even more astonished, shouted in glee, unable to believe they'd done it. They'd built a tower of blocks from Earth to the moon. Sitting down, they marveled at the colossal structure, likening it to a giant pencil in Minecraft, and agreed it was a breathtaking sight. Doro, who'd never witnessed anything like it, hadn't realized the moon's view was so stunning. He thanked Jess for revealing it to him. Rising, Jess suggested they stop lounging and hunt for lunar resources. Just then, a low rumble interrupted. "You traveled this far to perish, blue planet filth," snarled a creature before them. This was a blood-crazed moonlight rabbit, threat level SS. Despite its menacing aura, one strike sent it flying to oblivion. It only managed to startle Jess and Doro briefly. Doro barely registered where Jess got his mechanical weapon. But the rabbit wasn't dead. Lifting its head, it bellowed that no blue planet scum would leave alive, its roar nearly deafening them. It had summoned its kin, and the situation was turning dire. The rabbits quickly encircled the duo. Jess fought back with his mechanical claw, but it wasn't enough. Watching Jess struggle, Doro realized they were unprepared for a full-scale fight. Noticing the rabbits ignored him and targeted Jess, Doro saw a chance to flee to the planet. Yet, glancing at the tower, something held him back. Looking at Earth, he recalled who'd shown him this unforgettable view. Meanwhile, Jess battled the monster horde. Suddenly, a rabbit exploited his blind spot, lunging from behind. At that moment, a projectile shot through it at breakneck speed. It was Doro, who landed beside his boss after dispatching the foe. A shocked Jess admitted he thought Doro would abandon him. Doro replied he wouldn't leave his master alone, grateful for the beauty Jess had shown him. Doro, in response, declared he wouldn't abandon his master, deeply thankful for being shown something truly magnificent. Just as the horde of rabbits lunged at them, the protagonist remarked that he admired his companion's resolve. Moments later, the creatures buried them under their collective mass. Doro braced for the worst, but when he opened his eyes, he found himself unharmed. Soaring away from the beasts in the Power Moon suit, Jess observed that Doro had now experienced the romance he'd spoken of. Having passed the trial, there was no need for restraint. His suit, equipped with an array of gadgets, was ready to obliterate those pesky rabbits. With a chilling grin, Jess extended his arm and unleashed the suit's devastating force on his foes. Later, perched on the moon and gazing at Earth, the two companions clinked their glasses. Sipping an unfamiliar drink, Doro inquired if this had been his master's true intent. Jess replied that the notion of branding the moon with his name emerged along the way. In truth, they'd spent considerable effort carving those letters. Doro pondered why his master engaged in such a whimsical task. Gazing at the planet once more, Jess explained it was simply enjoyable. Where else could he savor the view of Earth from the moon? Their moment of awe was abruptly shattered by a violet glow. An explosion of unimaginable force erupted below, erasing a massive portion of another world's planet in seconds. Stunned, Doro watched as his beloved planet was nearly halved. Sealing his power suit's visor, Gok commanded his partner to remain there. He sped toward the source of the blast. It happened so swiftly that Doro couldn't even respond. What was happening? Who could shatter a planet? Meanwhile, King Jess reached the surface. Furious at the potential destruction of his creations, he swore to eliminate the culprit. On the ground, he shed his power suit and tried summoning the Grand Tourist Golem. To his frustration, no signal came. After dashing forward, he finally spotted Grand Tourist, or rather, its remains. The golem had surpassed even the previous lord of this realm in strength. As Jess processed this, voices emerged behind him. "Boss, boss, someone's still alive," squeaked a creature, pointing at the weapon in Gok's grip. A mysterious figure chuckled. "What kind of weirdo roams around with a shovel?" Yet Urus, hovering beside her leader, noted that he himself wielded a wooden stick, not much different. This figure brandished the mightiest custom weapon in the Chronolife world, a wooden stick reinforced 99 times. Unfazed, King Jess demanded to know who this insolent fool was, daring to ruin his domain. The battle was on. Chronolife's mightiest warrior, wielding the +99 reinforced wooden stick, was named Peace. King Jess didn't recognize him, having never encountered other players. Seeing the shattered Grand Tourist, he knew this eccentric with the stick was responsible. His tower, painstakingly built to reach the moon and embrace true romance, lay in ruins. For what? Who was this menace? Clearly, a lunatic in nothing but underwear. Enraged, Jess warned the fiend to face the consequences. Urus, the creature beside the boy, relished the pervert jab and teased her master relentlessly. The stick-wielding figure smirked, amused that Jess was clueless about his opponent. Peace had a long journey ahead and much to achieve, but Jess would learn soon enough. With a sudden burst, Peace charged at Juku. If King Jess didn't know who he faced, he'd pay for his ignorance. Peace closed in, aiming to strike. The wooden stick's attack was formidable, but Jess dodged using his spacesuit. It was perilous, the last hit disabled the left engine. Peace commended his foe's agility. This guy had much to answer for. Jess unleashed his arsenal of alien weaponry again. Luna missile barrage activated. A salvo of varied caliber shells rocketed toward Peace. The name struck Peace as absurd, but his opponent had flair. Peace countered with a sweeping uppercut, hurling stone blocks skyward. Gok, spotting the incoming rocks, attempted an urgent evacuation. Moments before impact, he abandoned his battered suit. Crashing to the ground, he summoned his next creation. King's castle erupted from the earth's depths. Peace was startled by the towering, ambulatory fortress. With jerky motions, King's castle struck where Peace stood. Urus, horrified, lost sight of her master. From the moon, Doro watched, praying for his master's safety. The castle's massive hand pressed downward, yet it couldn't pin Peace. With a single left hook, Peace repelled the fortress's assault. Jess was incredulous. This guy blocked everything with a stick. Now, Peace would demonstrate his prowess. The pervert scaled the giant's arm with astonishing speed, clearly planning something extraordinary. In an instant, Peace loomed above the castle's head. Downward strike, he bellowed, delivering a catastrophic blow. But Peace's expression shifted, noticing something odd. Cubes materialized in the air, dozens, then hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands. Jess, wielding his shovel, conjured an entire army of cubes. A barrier of 1 million cubes formed in seconds, a supreme defense against a supreme offense. Jess struggled to comprehend who this man was, wielding such unearthly power. Peace, too, was impressed. This kid with the shovel wasn't timid, but the game had to end. Tired of toying, Peace smashed through the cube barrier at blinding speed, closing in on Jizoku. Shovel versus wooden stick. A clash was imminent. Which would prevail? The force of their collision reverberated through space, shaking the planet. Fragments of Earth scattered into the cosmos. The planet split in two. Soon after, Urus located her master, awestruck. He'd obliterated an entire world. Perhaps the developers should have built it sturdier. Then, Peace saw something unexpected. The shovel blazed with a vivid blue flame in its owner's hands. How had Gok survived? King Gok stood on a fragment of land in space, barely breathing. Unyielding, he hurled insults at the pervert. But, overcome by exhaustion or lack of air, Jess collapsed. That shovel seemed suspect, a peculiar weapon for an extraordinary player. Who was he really? Peace mused. Suddenly, a massive rift opened. Two figures emerged, a man and a woman. The CEO of Chronolife, Choi Duk, and his unidentified companion. Dukbei was visibly upset that the boy had demolished yet another planet. Peace, addressing the man as his grandfather, inquired what brought him here. The man retorted with the same question. Just then, the girl spotted an unconscious player and approached him. As she worked to revive him, Peace asked if this lovely woman was his grandfather's granddaughter. Gently lifting the boy, the brunette persisted in assessing Go's condition, urging him to show more resilience. After all, she had tirelessly strengthened him, even if it meant defeating him repeatedly in the game. Such dedicated support, or rather, the work of another world's lead developer, Yuria. Go struggled to grasp her words, still reeling from the pain. He slipped back into unconsciousness. The priority was that he was alive, everything else could be mended. The girl pressed a kiss to his lips. This, surely, was the romance Gok had described. Moments later, their lips were touched by the cold void of space. Sweet dreams, dear player. Later, Doro attempted to rouse his master. A light slap to the cheek stirred him. Go bolted upright, shouting that he was in pain. Clutching his head, he tried to piece together recent events. Memories flooded back, a fractured world, a shockwave tearing the planet apart. Yet now, everything appeared whole and safe. Doro, overjoyed, flung his arms around Jess, thrilled to see his master well. Slightly sheepish, he admitted he'd also been concerned about himself and how he'd cope living on the moon. Since Doro was here, it meant Gok was still on the moon. Fussing around the boy, the dinosaur checked that all his lord's limbs were intact. Despite battling a formidable foe, Gi felt surprisingly good, though he recalled being gravely injured. Jess asked Doro to recount everything that happened after he blacked out. Doro eagerly shared what he'd witnessed. First, the land had split in two. Then, a mysterious voice echoed from a vast spatial rift, urging calm and vigilance. A girl had carried the unconscious boy to the moon, assuring Doro that he was fine and merely needed time to heal. She cast a potent healing spell to save his life. Doro asked who was responsible for the chaos. Was it the creator? Were these her schemes? Yuria, flattered that Doro recalled her, clarified it wasn't her doing. The culprit was another player, Peace, wielding the +99 reinforced wooden stick. He'd crossed from Chronolife's main server, the mightiest entity in this universe. Another world had shielded new players with a system barrier, blocking main server users until Peace shattered it with a single, devastating strike. He'd returned to his original world, but he'd come back, threatening this world's peace again. Jess would learn all this upon waking. The creator had high expectations for him, he needed to prove himself and achieve greatness. Concluding her speech, Yuria restored the broken planet. Immense energy fused both halves of the globe, resembling the birth of a supernova. As the dust cleared, Doro opened his eyes, astonished. The planet was whole again. Yuria vanished the moment her presence was no longer needed, and the magical barrier was reinstated. That's how it unfolded while Jess was out. Listening intently, Jess hesitated, lost in thought. He'd been too cocky. Being hailed as another world's ruler had made him feel untouchable. Now, he saw it as pitiful, he'd failed to protect anything. Doro comforted his lord, pointing out that surviving a fight against the strongest player was already a feat. Oddly, Jess had mostly deflected blows without retaliating, thanks to that strange shovel. How had it withstood the mightiest weapon? An entire world had been destroyed, yet the shovel endured. Jess held it out to Doro, asking if he knew its materials. Doro, just a dinosaur, knew nothing of minerals but suggested someone who might, the dwarves of Nelvin Mine, skilled in crafting, mining, and jewelry. If true, Jess activated his crafting skill. Though Doro didn't know the mine's location, he proposed searching from high above. Clicking the create button, resources converged at a single point. It was time to push forward. That +99 pervert, who wrecked his home deserved a real fight. And that mysterious girl? She'd just have to wait until he gained power no player could rival. No one escapes unpunished. Jess's journey continued. In another world, Dark Highland, a skeleton army battled with numerical advantage against 4 high-level players. One user obliterated over 5 skeletons in a single strike. Yoim, a level 49 warrior, relished the abundance of foes, ensuring it wouldn't be dull like before. A red-haired girl, armed only with a shield, pulverized skeleton bones to dust. Peach, a level 42 shield warrior, noted that despite their numbers, the skeletons were pathetically weak. A boy with animal ears teased her, suggesting it was easy because she was a monster herself. Fox, a level 41 thief, and the squad's final member, Grace, a level 45 mage, speculated that the difficulty was lowered for new players. It was a smart move. Overpowered monsters would deter newcomers, and these players had leveled up faster than the developers anticipated. Could the server be run by amateurs? It had even crashed recently. Fox believed their squad was the server's strongest, but Yoin called that arrogant. Suddenly, Grace spotted something, a large object approaching through the air. The players watched the unidentified flying object closely. Visibility was poor, but its shape grew clearer with each second. The group hoped it was an unknown monster, eager to earn achievements for defeating it. Yoim figured the creature was unlucky to encounter their squad first. They prepared to hasten its descent. Meanwhile, inside Gran Turis's head, Jess was elated. They'd nearly reached the mines. Doro, however, clarified it was merely a skeleton stronghold. Inside Gran Turis's head, Doro questioned why he'd agreed to this plan. Still don't get it. It's about romance, Jess said with a wide grin. Jess was thrilled they'd recovered Gran Turis's head. Then, a faint, "Kill me," whispered. Peering out, Jess saw live players below. He wasn't alone in this world. From above, the group below looked primed for combat. A brilliant flash blinded Jizoka and Doro, multiple ground attacks aimed at their unidentified craft. Jess hadn't anticipated such a fiery greeting from fellow players. Each squad member, except Peach Shield, launched ranged attacks at the target. Observing her teammates, the red-haired girl resolved to test her might as well. She hefted her shield, preparing to hurl it with force. The immense spinning power behind her strongest throw was meant to pierce the monster's defenses instantly, but the shield merely ricocheted off Doc's flying contraption. Their attacks were as feeble as raindrops tapping a pane of glass. Jess couldn't fathom their weakness. Perhaps they were just novices. After clashing with that underwear-clad foe, the contrast was stark. Doro questioned his master about their next move with this band of players. Would they let them go? Jess had no intention of sparing them since they struck first. He needed to even the score. King Grok turned to Gran Turis, commanding it to punish the assailants. Fire a barrage of cannons. Annihilate them. The players noticed the maw of the strange beast begin to gape. Gran Turis primed its weapon for retaliation. Watching the scene unfold, Yoahim sensed imminent danger. Ma beam. 3 squad members took a direct hit. It was unprecedented for them. Yoim stared in dread at his fallen allies. Astonishingly, a single strike had vanquished 3 members of one of the mightiest teams. Jess spotted one survivor. It had withstood the initial blow, but now he'd target it relentlessly. Ma and tenfold matcha beams. Gran Turis unleashed a torrent of beams toward the last adventurer, its playful sciatic support trembling. The ground erupted in flames, obscuring the scene. Miraculously, Yoahim dodged the lethal rays for a moment, but his luck ran out, and all targets were struck. After landing, Jess and Doro stepped out to survey the area. Yoahim lay unconscious. Even his sword, forged by a master, couldn't counter the overwhelming threat. Doro was puzzled about why they'd landed, as no one here could guide them to the mines, unless Jess planned to revive ancient skeletons to ask them. The idea intrigued Jess. It could work. Eager to try something new, he tapped bones and skulls with his shovel, collecting materials. The first resource-gathering task succeeded. A crafting window appeared, offering new recipes. The conditions for activation were odd but captivating. Gacho could now craft formidable skeletons based on resource combinations. Excited to explore his newfound powers, especially with abundant resources available, Jess soon crafted a small, bony creature resembling a dog. He named his puppy Banaji, now joined by other companions. Doro urged him to hurry and stop playing around, they had no time for distractions. Then, a system message caught Jess's eye, a special creation. Having crafted over 100 unique models, he earned the chance to create something extraordinarily rare. With a faint smile, Gok said he had just the thing in mind. Without hesitation, he pressed the create button. Massive bones began to assemble. Jess and his companions watched, awestruck. It was unimaginable. Both Jess and Doro were unnerved by the sight. Amid triumphant bursts of fireworks, a figure emerged. It greeted its master. The seven-star skeleton, born from an epic creature, was the Lich King himself, pledging loyalty to Jizoku. The undead monarch knelt, requesting a name. Doro panicked, this creature unnerved him. The Lich King was the most devious and malevolent monster, never one to submit. But Jess was decided. Henceforth, you are Pigaduck. Despite Doro's reservations, Jess was pleased with his new ally, who seemed compliant and capable. The Lich thanked his master for the name and asked for his first command. Jess promptly inquired if Pigaduck knew the location of Nelvin Mine. Doro tried to speak, but the Lich King cut him off, confirming he knew the way. Jess ordered him to lead them there at once. Ready to obey, the Lich drew his bloodied dagger. Moments earlier, when two seemingly ordinary tools had clashed, a brilliant flash lit up the shadowed forests of another world. When the planet had fractured, a surge of unparalleled energy had erupted into space. Soon after, the game's developer restored everything. Many players were baffled by the server's events. They gazed skyward, witnessing something unprecedented. Not only users but also the planet's monsters, creatures from the ocean depths surfacing to see it, noticed the signs. Some royals observed the event with intrigue. It was rather entertaining. Could this signal the arrival of another world's new host user, or others vying for its rulership? A bold declaration, indeed. To all who saw the words etched on the moon, it would be known as the Day of King's Advent. Returning to our hero, they prepared for the trek to Nelvin Mine. But Jess had one more task. He spun around, addressing the undead king. At that moment, the Lich concealed his dagger behind his back. Jess declared it was time for change, skeletons needn't hide any longer. King Leech was confused by his master's words. Jess clarified that they couldn't abandon these lands. Dark Highland needed a shake-up, with much left to do. Meanwhile, Leech kept his dagger hidden from GCS view. Jess proposed lingering to start a significant project. Pigaduck was puzzled by the man's intent. Locking eyes, Gok urged everyone to prepare. Safety first. Instantly, King Leech found himself in a construction worker's outfit. Jess resolved to build the most secure sanctuary possible. By uniting their efforts, they could erect it swiftly. Their goal, a fortress tower, stockpiled with weapons to deter any approach. They'd ensure their own protection. The skeletons cheered, thrilled by the bold plan. King Leech stood, still baffled by the turn of events. Make skeletons great again. Later, King Latch discarded his dagger. Catching it once more, he swung it forcefully to slice a red ribbon. The Dark Tower's construction was ceremonially complete, a remarkable feat. Jess glanced at Doro, asking him to conduct a final safety test. Doro was visibly reluctant but couldn't defy his lord. Aiming at the intruder, Doro faced the tower. Within seconds, the target was detected and neutralized. The test passed flawlessly. Jess could now proceed with confidence. If an unbeatable foe emerged, they'd send a laser signal and flee. Upon seeing it, Jess would rush to their aid. After patting Banaji farewell, Jess surveyed their new stronghold. No tasks remained for GI here, they'd head to Nelvin Mine. They mounted a motorcycle, bidding everyone goodbye once more. It had been a thrilling detour in Dark Highland. Now, the main mission awaited. Doro asked why they'd switched vehicles, leaving Granthorous behind. Gi explained it was too sluggish and unwieldy. King Leech couldn't grasp why the boy had invested so much time in this place. Doro was equally baffled, as this wasn't their primary goal. Jess clarified that it was enjoyable, and they'd had a blast. Plus, they'd gained many new allies. King Leech reflected on Jess's words. Pigaduck hoped this journey would be fun too. Gi promised to make it so, and they indeed relished their travels, camping by a fire, strolling in the crisp air. At last, they arrived at the mine. Nearing the entrance, they spotted sturdy support beams. The tunnel glowed with crimson miner lamps, a striking sight at first glance. Impressive, but where were the dwarves? Per the Lich King's recent memory, no one had heard from the mine's dwarves in ages. Jess was stunned by this news. Since a certain day, the dwarves had ceased emerging from the mine, and none who ventured in to investigate had returned. Doro, alarmed, demanded why the Lich hadn't mentioned this sooner. The Undead King retorted that no one had asked. As the group pondered their next move, someone observed them from above. Suddenly, Jess detected two figures launching a long-range assault. Doro and Leech deflected the stranger's attack. Glowing red eyes studied them curiously. Gi instructed Pagoda to investigate. Leech eagerly took on the task. Seeing the Undead King charge fiercely into battle, Jess clarified not to kill them, just capture them. The Lich delivered two sharp slaps to the pair of dwarves. Jess examined the attackers closely. They were the very dwarves they sought. He found their aggression odd. Were dwarves always so hostile? Approaching one, Jess worked to revive him. Once conscious, the dwarf warned the outsiders to flee. The mine's dwarves had lost their sanity, turning violent. Anyone entering would be slain. After this, the group surveyed their surroundings, noting a swarm of hostile dwarves. If they'd restored these two to their senses, there must be a way to save the others. Perhaps the sharp blows to the head had worked. With a faint grin, Jess devised a brilliant plan. A simple, effective solution: physiotherapy. Jess faced the dwarves, provoking them into attacking. It worked. They were enraged, craving a fight. The fun commenced. 3 against a horde of dwarves. The Lich swiftly employed his arcane abilities, hurling bursts of dark energy at the advancing foes. Doro, like a true head crab, burrowed into the minds of the elderly dwarves, while Doc flung opponents left and right with his mechanical fists. It was a thrilling spectacle. Just as Jess urged everyone to stay vigilant, he left himself open to an attack. Spotting his assailant, he repelled the strike, aided at that moment by the Lich King. Jess hadn't expected Leech's assistance and remarked he could have handled it alone. Leech had no doubt of that, it was merely a coincidence. The first dwarf to awaken, observing the chaos, pleaded for less noise. Such a racket could rouse a true beast. Abruptly, a massive bony claw smashed through the mine's walls. Everyone froze in shock. The slumbering creature had stirred. No one had encountered this being before, not even Doro, who knew all major monsters. The situation had escalated dramatically. Now they faced a far mightier foe than a group of deranged elders. Jess and Doro fell back to a safer distance to devise a strategy. The creature was a curse-revived zombie dragon. Further details could be accessed via a pop-up window, if supported, otherwise, tough luck. The beast didn't allow time to prepare, launching a fierce assault. For reasons unknown, it targeted only Joka. Doro was relieved he wasn't the bait this time. They needed to act fast, the situation was spiraling. Jess sprinted, summoning Gran Turris. It was Gran Turris's chance to prove its worth. The hostile creature was primed for combat, setting the stage for a clash of titans. Both looked formidable, but Gran Turris refused to be underestimated. Igniting its engine, it ascended to maintain its imposing stare. With a swift strike, the zombie dragon clipped its propeller, forcing it to crash. The beast seized Gran Turris's head in its claws. It seemed defeat loomed for the green giant. Doro struggled to control Gran Turris, its movements were rigid. It needed its body. Jess was at a loss for resources to aid it. Then, he recalled a unique ability, crafting with bones. A brilliant glow erupted where Gran Turris's head lay. The zombie dragon stared, baffled by the light. The creature beheld something extraordinary. Jess had used his bonemaker skill to craft another legendary entity, its star count staggering. A colossal skull Gran Turris, of perilous power, materialized before the hapless zombie dragon. Whether from terror or bravado, the beast unleashed a shrill roar. Gran Turris charged headfirst. The monster collapsed instantly, and Bone Grancious flung its foe skyward with its tail. Jess monitored closely, ordering the creature's demise. Grancious lifted its head, jaws wide, amassing energy for a final strike. Skalmipo. A direct hit vaporized the zombie dragon. The beam obliterated everything in its path. Onlookers marveled at the spectacle, none had witnessed such a feat. Jess was pleased. This creature likely caused the mysterious vanishings. Spectators outside also gazed at the massive energy pillar piercing an ancient mountain. One remarked it seemed they triumphed. "What now?" a gray-haired man asked his mentor. The man crumpled a piece of paper. It was a fair question. The contract was void, discarded. This man, a shark named Heart Heater, and his aide, Rome, decided they'd need to contact some fool soon. The clamor in Nelwyn Mine soon quieted. The dwarves, now lucid, celebrated their liberation as they neared the defeated zombie dragon's remains. They were humiliated to have been controlled by such a creature. While the dwarves examined the beast's remnants, Jess asked Doro if he'd found anything noteworthy. The small beastman replied it was empty, noting something odd: there shouldn't have been an unknown monster here. It was a first for him. A dwarf then shared that the creature had appeared suddenly one day, and rumors suggested these strangers had saved them. Minekeeper Kim expressed heartfelt gratitude. After a firm handshake, King Jess and the green-bearded dwarf exchanged introductions. Seizing the moment, the protagonist posed a question to the minekeeper. Handing over his shovel, he asked about the material it was crafted from. As the elderly dwarf grasped the tool, it was clear he was a master craftsman. He examined its texture and contours, swiftly assessing the remarkable object. His response stunned everyone: he had no idea what the shovel was or what it was made of. Truly, he knew nothing about this mineral, yet he found it captivating. Bidding farewell to his saviors, Kim started to walk off with the shovel. Only moments later, realizing the old man's intent, Jess, furious, grabbed him by the beard and yelled at him not to scamper off so hastily. Later, King Jess showcased the shovel's abilities to the dwarves. Constructing a towering fountain shaped like a zombie dragon, he raised the shovel and asked again if anyone recognized the mineral. The minekeeper reiterated that he was clueless but wouldn't mind receiving the item as a gift. Ignoring the remark, Jess pondered his next step. He still yearned to uncover his weapon's composition, so he asked the Lich King where the best place to gather information was in this world. Pigik suggested the launch plaza, where new players begin, likely a hub of diverse knowledge. Josa was surprised to learn of a launching pad in this world, having first appeared in an open field. So where did this starting city come from? Rim, has that fool shown up yet? Heart Heater asked his assistant, wandering through the launch plaza's marketplace. Trailing behind, Rim explained that the fool had vowed to arrive after finishing his tasks. Their chat was cut short by someone's shouts, captivating the crowd. Displaying a flyer featuring a mechanized kite's head, the man urged everyone to listen closely. Joachim warned the crowd that this beast was immensely powerful. Left unchecked, it could reduce another world to ruins. For others, seeing the Yoim squad seek aid was shocking. This was serious. The scene amused Lone Shark. Strolling past a row of knights, he noted their high spirits. Then, a familiar voice caught his ear. "You sure about this?" a woman asked playfully. "If it's as you claim, battling this beast will be a thrill." At her words, the knights stirred. The crowd instantly recognized the emblem on their armor. The royal palace guards now led the way. Members of the Divine Guild assembled, joined by red-cloaked warriors, their white-crossed capes signaling the elite crossing the line. Guild, 10 of the strongest holy knights. The Holyland Guild, comprising the court's top mages, was present too. Valbenden, the Guild of Virtuous Thieves, took its place. Capping the procession was the mightiest organization in this world, the Guild of Justice. The convergence of all 5 guilds formed a new entity, the World Guild Alliance, this world's branch, led by Commander Miss Hawk. Joachim's speech piqued her interest. Thus, Joachim was tasked with guiding Miss Hawk and the World Guild to where the monster had appeared. Meanwhile, in Nelwyn Mine, King Jess alerted his companion that he needed to log off briefly for a break. Upon returning, he'd head straight to the launch pad. Summoning Kim, he asked if the dwarf could manage the mine in his absence. The old dwarf cautioned that he'd likely be drinking and lazing about, having endured the monster's tyranny for so long. Calling him incorrigible, Doro asked what was in Kim's satchel. Kim revealed diamondium, explaining he planned to sell it at the plaza, with Jess earning the largest share as thanks for freeing the dwarves. After striking a deal with the minekeeper, the protagonist exited the game, entrusting the Lich King with protecting Kim and the diamondium. Before Jess vanished from the game world, the dwarves gave him a warm send-off. Waving back, he grinned and vowed to return soon. System alert, you have logged out of the game. King Jess, still smiling, lay on his bed, hand raised. Back in reality, he slowly removed his VR headset. For a moment, he stared at the ceiling, his expression sour. Returning from the game always hit him hard. After lingering, hunger struck. Preparing a curry, he sat at the table and switched on the news. As usual, Chronolife's Another World dominated media charts. Reports highlighted a rare mineral shortage causing global buzz, diamondium. Absent from markets for a month, its trading hub set prices 10 times higher. Hearing this, Jack recalled Kim's plan to sell this ore. He'd earn more than expected. Then, the news announced diamondium's market price, 100 million per kilogram. Shocked, Jack spat out the curry he'd just eaten. He hadn't realized he was sitting on a fortune. Meanwhile, in the initial town's small guesthouse, Rome was livid that the idiot was so late. What if he never showed? Heart Heater, however, was certain he'd come. He hated losing more than death itself. Still, this fool was the world's top idiot. Oh, not very refined, is it? Lone Shark muttered with a smirk. Suddenly, a rumble echoed in the starting city's center. System alert, connecting to another world, a warrior's silhouette formed in the bustling square. Designated number 1 by the system, his golden armor, red hair, and crown with a purple gem made him unmistakable. The hardcore leveling warrior had returned. Later, in the guest house, Lone Shark, grinning warmly, noted it had been a while. The hardcore leveling warrior agreed, asking how Heart Heater was faring. He'd heard rumors of the zombie dragon's demise and wished he'd faced it himself, but it was too late. As Rim grumpily poured tea, Heart Heater mentioned the boy who slew the dragon. He seems to have claimed Nelwyn Mine after the battle. Pounding Rim, the hardcore warrior asked to get closer to the action. Are you sending me to take him out? He asked, taking a grand sip of tea before collapsing, yelping in pain from scalding his tongue. Meanwhile, tossing a parchment at the man sprawled on the floor, Heart Heater inquired if he'd take on the new assignment. The sheet landed squarely on the hardcore leveling warrior's face. His task: locate the individual who claimed Nelwyn Mine in the shadowy highlands and fulfill the contract's terms. At the same time, in Nelwyn Mine, the master of these lands re-entered the game. Why so soon? Barely a couple of hours had passed. Upon materializing in another world, King Jess urged haste for the day's plans. Their destination, the starting plaza. Old Man Kim hadn't anticipated his return at all, greeting him in his afternoon nap attire. Thrilled by recent news, Jess confirmed everything was set. He declared their immediate departure. No one grasped the urgency. Jess again entrusted his loyal Lich King with overseeing the mine, selecting the sharpest and mightiest guard for such a critical site. Noticing his master's unusual rush, Pagoda commented that diamondium's value must be sky-high. After all, they were near Dark Highland, where diamondium was rare, even in mineral-rich areas. The undead king cautioned that transporting such valuable cargo wasn't safe. It required not only robust security but also dependable transport. After deliberating how to move the heap of diamondium, the Lich and his master reached an agreement. Minutes later, the entire group was aboard a makeshift vehicle crafted from Granturus's head. Pigaduck's solution was clever: they detached the head, resolving security concerns. This transport was not only practical but also swift. As Jess proudly lauded Granturus, a twang rang out nearby. An arrow shot forth at incredible speed, piercing the vehicle's wheel. The impact was so forceful that it flipped Granturus, leaving Gok and his companions dazed. The World Guild's army appeared on a nearby hill, led by Miss Hawk, who had fired the fateful arrow. Granturus was encircled in open terrain, an ideal stage for Hawk's spectacle. Aiming a TNT-tipped arrow skyward, she signaled a full assault. Releasing the bowstring, a vivid red flare lit the sky, cueing the troops. The Divine Guild, under its leader, charged into close combat. The Crossing the Line Guild, with Mad Suyang and the Vanguard, provided support. For a surprise, an aerial attack was launched by Bibidity Bu and his Holyland Guild. Why these folks were here, no one knew. After issuing orders, Miss Hawk joined her guild in the fray. The World Guild Alliance had fully surrounded Granturus. Peering from his vehicle's window, Jess couldn't identify these attackers. It no longer mattered. Without delving further, he triggered the Metamecha beam. But Miss Hawk anticipated this. She ordered Plan A, allowing all soldiers to evade and retaliate. The guild leaders joined the front lines. From above, Bibid Baba Bu noted that the monster's details matched reports from players who'd faced it. Joachim, the defeated player, was also in this fight. Charging ahead of the commanders, he leaped onto Granturus's hull. Swinging his sword with all his might, he aimed for the monster's eye. But as his blade met the eye, a curious clink of glass sounded. Failing to penetrate, Joachim spotted a figure behind the eye. Pressing against the glass, Jess glared at him with venom. He flung open Gran Turis's glass compartment, slamming Joachim against the machine's hull. Seeing a fellow player, the World Guild army froze. "You filthy bandits!" King Jess bellowed. Raising his foot, he shouted louder, vowing never to surrender his diamondium. Simultaneously, a massive mechanical foot emerged from beneath Gran Turis's head. As Jess kicked the hull, the mechanical foot mimicked him, crushing enemies one by one. Still confused, the commanders and troops scrambled to retreat. Panic was quelled by the Thieves' Guild leader. The soldiers and leaders were stunned, unsure if this player was ally or enemy. Now, it was clear, he'd attacked, officially becoming their foe. Swiftly, the guild leaders rallied, launching a coordinated assault, supporting each other and closing in on the target. Just as Jess thought it was over, an unfamiliar voice rang out. "First sword-wielding style, Moonlight Flash." With those words, the hardcore leveling warrior sliced through most of the World Guild soldiers on the field. Jess and his group stood frozen, awestruck by the display. The red-haired swordsman landed beside him. Approaching, he asked if Jess was the shovel-wielding guy who'd claimed the mine. Eyeing him warily, Jess asked what if he was. Striking the shovel with his sword, the hardcore leveling warrior declared, "Dear client, allow me to escort you safely."
"Valued guest, permit me to guide you securely," he stated. Right after those words, he vanished before everyone's gaze. As the stunned fighters scrambled to understand, his disappearance led to a chilling shadow materialized directly overhead. Employing the lunar stormblade technique, the dedicated leveling warrior tore through most of the lingering foes. A spiraling tempest erupted on the battlefield, drawing everyone nearby toward its core. The terrified expressions of his enemies brought a grin to the crimson-haired swordsman. World Guild Alliance? That's a grand title for such feeble folk, more like a coalition of global failures. His haughty taunts enraged the Alliance's knights. Mustering their remaining vigor, they lunged at the menacing choice that sealed their doom. Had they fled, some might have survived. Now, they'd all perish in infernal flames. Perched atop Gran Turis's head, King Jess incinerated the World Guild Alliance's remnants. The red-haired swordsman's astounding prowess left him in awe. Meanwhile, Old Man Kim, seated beside the youth, disclosed the man's identity. He's known as the hardcore leveling warrior, among the finest players in all of Chrono Life. Hearing this, Gok wavered. What if this guy had clashed with that creep wielding a staff? Who'd triumph? Behind Jez, the surviving members of Joachim's unit lingered beneath Gran Turis's head. Quietly retrieving their barely alive leader, they debated their next move. Every guild commander was dead. The red-haired man who slew them was now occupied with the World Guild's remaining forces. Meanwhile, the guy atop the dragon's head sat casually, ignoring them. They stood no chance of winning this fight, but they could still exact vengeance on that shovel-wielding guy from before. Plus, he'd mentioned carrying Diamond's tempting prize. Resolving to strike, Joachim's squad readied themselves to act on the count of 3. 1, Chizo said amiably, joining their discussion. Landing beside the petrified group, he inquired who they planned to target. If they were so sure of themselves, he wouldn't dissuade them. With a robotic kick, he reduced Joachim's squad to pulp. Such a devastating strike caught the hardcore leveling warrior's eye. The red-haired swordsman chuckled, noting the kid wasn't as weak as he'd first thought. When the battle concluded, he approached his valued client and greeted him anew. Jess expressed gratitude to his rescuer, who curtly replied he'd only acted for the reward. As they conversed, Miss Hawk attempted to slip away unnoticed, but moments later, her face collided with a pair of legs. Realization hit. She faced a fate worse than death. For a time, the trio stood in silent confrontation. Riding together atop Grand Tourist's head, Miss Hawk yelled for the two men to pause and listen. She swore she didn't know they carried Dondium. The World Guild Alliance had only come to slay the beast. Jess eyed her skeptically, questioning how she knew they had Diamondium. Was she trying to lie her way out? Even in such dire straits, Hawk retorted that Jess himself had shouted it before the battle, emerging from the dragon's head. Jisak paused, reflected, and realized he had indeed let it slip. In truth, there was no way they could have known he owned the entire ore deposit. Evidently, a misunderstanding had led him and his red-haired ally to obliterate the combined World Guild forces. Bro, the news showed a flying dragon head everywhere, Doro pointed out. Of course they were after Grand Tourists, not your ore. That was an epic blunder. The dwarf nodded, irking Jess further. Sir, I have a question, Jess said. The red-haired man advised him to address him as Mr. Hardcore Leveling Warrior, unless he wanted trouble. Jess asked if the client who hired him knew about the Diamondium. Hardcore Leveling Warrior replied, they weren't in the business of charity obviously. The rescue wasn't for Jess's charm. This surprised Jess. It was odd they'd chosen to save him rather than seize the ore by force. This guy was peculiar. Still, Guy had no choice but to meet the client. Soon, they reached the town. Hardcore Leveling Warrior promptly led the client to the central plaza, perhaps not the wisest move. Word reached the city's remaining guild members, who planned a warm reception for Jess and his ally. A knight declared that these two had crushed their alliance's forces. And? Gru retorted, plunging the plaza into uneasy silence. The alliance remnants weren't about to let intruders pass. Suddenly, Miss Hawk stepped before Jess, arms outstretched, urging her subordinates to treat him respectfully, as a guest. The soldiers protested, but she quelled them, reminding them they'd attacked first. With misunderstandings cleared, Miss Hawk invited Jess into the town but first sought confirmation of his promise. The Diamondium he'd vowed to share a piece, if she assisted. Guy, true to his word, agreed to provide the ore if all went smoothly and Hawk kept her men in check. Soon, Gatch and his group reached the plaza's heart. It was Jess's first time in such a bustling hub in chrono life. Everything was there, from savory dishes to elite weapons. Though frequently stopped, with Miss Hawk resolving disputes, they enjoyed strolling the plaza. During a fountain break, they each savored Yopi skewers, recommended by Hardcore Leveling Warrior as his companion's favorite. Jess, overwhelmed by the taste, devoured his in moments. When finished, the red-haired man asked if he enjoyed it. Ugh, that's gross, Hardcore Leveling Warrior exclaimed as Gok's tears and snot flowed with joy. Meanwhile, Doro grew concerned. Was it wise to linger? Weren't they meant to sell something? We should move, the three players, and the dwarf grumbled, amusing Doro with their laziness. Yet, Jez needed to meet the client who'd saved him. A mysterious voice nearby spurred this thought. Turning, the boy spotted an unfamiliar green-haired man sipping tea calmly. Smiling, Hardheater said, "Pleased to meet you." He'd tasked Hardcore Leveling Warrior with bringing the client here. A loan shark, he dealt in loans and similar ventures. Hearing his client had arrived but was delayed, he sought him out. He wasn't thrilled that Hardcore Leveling Warrior hadn't followed through, but it wasn't a major issue. It was time to reveal why the loan shark sought his client. Before Hardheater could speak, Jez interjected, "He wants to buy Diamondium, right?" Such sharpness pleased the lender. As he prepared to state his terms, the ground trembled. Jess was startled, and even Hardcore Leveling Warrior seemed unprepared. "Oh heavens," Hardheater murmured, smiling. "That's why meeting at the shelter was wise." A massive golden throne appeared above the plaza, stunning all. Sloth Riot, a great merchant in Chrono Life, and an NPC from the main server, had arrived. How had he crossed worlds? The throne signaled a mighty presence, yet only a small boy appeared. This wasn't the grand merchant they'd imagined. Players stood baffled, but NPCs sensed Sloth Riot's immense aura. Sighing, the merchant spoke briefly. Extending his hand, he asked the man opposite to sell him diamondium. Hard Heater greeted Lord Riot courteously but explained he'd first negotiated with Jez. The merchant demanded silence, calling the lone shark slippery like his foolish master, who dared rival a great merchant. These words drew a bloodthirsty smile from Hard Heater. He warned the boy to hush and not provoke his boss, unless he sought death. Lord Riot, unfazed, was ready to demonstrate their level gap. As a fight loomed, Jess stepped between them, urging calm. Realizing both wanted the diamondium, he saw an opportunity. Competition could inflate the item's value. "So, dear clients, what's your offer?"